Chapter 1. A Wedding and a Strange Gaze. The sun shone brilliantly in a crisp blue sky over Boulder, Colorado, casting golden hues across the lush gardens of the Meadow Creek estate. Hannah Miller, clad in an elegant ivory lace gown, gazed lovingly into the eyes of her soon-to-be husband, James Carter. Friends and family had gathered for the joyous occasion, the estate filled with cheerful murmurs and soft laughter. For Hannah, this day marked the beginning of her new life, a beautiful start with the man she deeply loved. As vows were exchanged under a charming floral arch draped in delicate white roses, Hannah felt an overwhelming wave of happiness. She looked out briefly at the sea of smiling faces, her eyes landing softly upon James's parents, Margaret and Robert Carter. Margaret, dressed in a refined lavender gown, offered a tight smile, reserved and somewhat cautious. Robert, beside her, had a peculiar look in his eyes, one Hannah couldn't quite interpret. His gaze lingered slightly longer than usual, carrying an unspoken weight that sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. She shook off the feeling as nerves, focusing back on James, whose expression was warm and full of anticipation. The officiant announced them husband and wife, and amid the applause, James leaned in, sealing their vows with a tender kiss. The reception at the elegant Carter House restaurant was lavish yet tastefully intimate, its grand hall illuminated by gentle candlelight. Hannah moved gracefully among their guests, smiling genuinely at their well wishes. However, she couldn't entirely dismiss the unsettling sensation she'd felt earlier. "Congratulations, Hannah." Margaret approached, embracing her briefly, her perfume elegant but sharp. "Welcome to our family. I do hope you'll find happiness with us." Hannah smiled warmly, though she couldn't shake the vague sense of distance in Margaret's voice. "Thank you, Margaret. It means a lot." Margaret hesitated slightly before speaking again, her voice dropping lower, softer. "James means the world to us. I'm sure you'll understand that family is extremely important in our home." "I understand," Hannah reassured gently, sensing a subtle warning behind Margaret's words. Throughout dinner, Hannah noticed Margaret glancing at Robert with frequent tension, her eyes narrowing occasionally in silent exchanges. Robert, however, remained quiet, absorbed in his thoughts. Hannah caught him once more looking her way, his expression a confusing blend of melancholy and familiarity. As the music shifted to a slow, romantic tune, James led Hannah onto the dance floor. His hand, strong yet gentle, clasped hers reassuringly. "Is everything all right?" James asked softly, noticing her distracted gaze. "It's fine," Hannah whispered, forcing a brighter smile. "Just overwhelmed, that's all." James held her closer, his presence comforting. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" "Always," she replied warmly, deciding to let go of her worries for now. As the night progressed, guests gradually bid their farewells. Margaret and Robert approached Hannah and James near the end of the evening. Robert, usually quiet, stepped forward first, his voice subdued. "Hannah, I wish you both all the happiness in the world." His tone held a strange urgency, his eyes looking into hers intently. "Take care of each other." She felt a stir of unease, but nodded politely. "Thank you, Robert. We will." Margaret intervened smoothly, her smile controlled. "Robert tends to worry too much. You'll both be fine. You have our support." Yet her tone carried a hidden skepticism that Hannah sensed immediately. As the evening concluded, James and Hannah said their final goodbyes, heading towards the car decorated playfully with ribbons and balloons. As they drove away, Hannah glanced back, noticing Margaret standing rigidly beside Robert, her eyes coolly following their car. Hannah shivered again, prompting James to reach out and grasp her hand firmly. "Cold?" he asked softly, eyes full of affection. She squeezed his hand gently, seeking reassurance in his warmth. "A little." James smiled, gently stroking her palm. "Everything will be perfect, Hannah." You'll see. I hope so, she whispered, resting her head on his shoulder, choosing to trust his confidence over her own lingering doubts. Unbeknownst to them both, back at the Carter house, Margaret had already retreated to the family's private study. Alone, her heart filled with unsettled suspicion, she opened an old album tucked away in a drawer. Her hands trembled slightly as she traced over a worn photograph. The faded image showed a young woman, nearly identical to Hannah, smiling beautifully. Margaret's eyes darkened. Not again, she murmured bitterly, her voice filled with unresolved anger and fear. Closing the album sharply, she sat back heavily in her chair, lost in memories she wished had remained buried. Outside the room, Robert stood quietly by the closed door, hearing the faint rustle of the pages turning. Guilt filled his heart like poison, knowing exactly which photograph Margaret had found. He sighed deeply, burdened by secrets he had sworn to take to his grave, unaware they were already unraveling into their family's future. This wedding night, filled with love and hope, unknowingly marked the beginning of a deeper, darker journey, a journey Hannah had no idea she had just embarked upon. Days passed swiftly after the wedding, yet Hannah still couldn't shake off the lingering unease she had experienced that day. She found herself often lost in thought during her quiet moments, replaying Robert's strange gaze, Margaret's guarded smiles, and the oddly tense atmosphere. Settling into their new home, a charming two-story house nestled in a peaceful neighborhood in Boulder, was meant to be joyful, yet Hannah felt isolated amidst her thoughts. James had quickly returned to his demanding job as a prominent architect, leaving Hannah alone most days, attempting to establish a comfortable domestic routine. One afternoon, while carefully unpacking delicate chinaware in the spacious kitchen, her phone buzzed softly. Hannah checked the caller ID, smiling gently as she answered. "Mom," she said, her voice a blend of happiness and sadness. "Hi, sweetheart," her father's gentle voice replied, carrying a familiar warmth. "Just checking in. How's married life treating you?" She paused, struggling momentarily to find the right words. "Good. It's an adjustment, Dad, but I'm managing." There was a pause from the other end. "I wish your mom could see you now, Hannah. She'd be so proud of you." Hannah's eyes misted. Her mother, Elizabeth, had passed away years before, but the ache of missing her never truly faded. Elizabeth had been vibrant and caring, traits Hannah proudly inherited. Now, facing uncertainties alone, Hannah felt the absence of her mother profoundly. "I miss her too," Hannah said quietly, fighting back tears. "I just wish she could have met James. She'd have adored him, I'm sure," her father reassured gently. "Now, tell me more about your new family. How are the Carters treating you?" "James is wonderful," Hannah began warmly, though hesitant to share her full concerns. "His parents, well, Margaret seems a bit reserved, and Robert, I'm not sure. He seems distant." There was another thoughtful silence. "Give them time, dear. Adjusting to family dynamics isn't always easy. Just remember, communication and patience are key." Hannah nodded, smiling through tears. "Thanks, Dad. I'll remember that." After ending the call, Hannah felt slightly better. Her father's calm voice always grounded her during uncertain times. She stood by the window, watching neighbors passing by, children playing outside, and imagined someday filling her new home with children's laughter, a dream she deeply cherished. That evening, Margaret invited Hannah and James for dinner at the Carter House restaurant. Hannah chose an elegant yet simple dress, trying her best to look respectful yet approachable, hoping to bridge any lingering tension. Upon arrival, the staff greeted them warmly, leading them to a private table by the grand windows. Robert and Margaret were already seated. Margaret stood to greet them formally, offering brief kisses on the cheeks. "You look lovely, Hannah," Margaret said politely, yet her tone remained distinctly cool. "Thank you, Margaret," Hannah responded, sincerely hopeful. "It's always nice to see you." Robert sat quietly, barely acknowledging them, his gaze avoiding Hannah entirely. His silence made Hannah increasingly uncomfortable, though she tried her best to remain cheerful. Throughout dinner, conversation revolved around superficial topics: the weather, the restaurant's menu, James's projects at work. Hannah noticed Margaret subtly monitoring her interaction with Robert. Every casual glance Hannah directed at her father-in-law seemed to draw Margaret's sharp, calculating scrutiny. As dessert arrived, Margaret abruptly changed the topic, her voice carrying an authoritative undertone. "Hannah, I hope you're settling into your new role comfortably. James mentioned you might consider leaving your teaching job to focus on family soon." Hannah's eyes widened slightly at the unexpected question. She glanced quickly at James, who seemed equally surprised. "Well, Margaret, teaching means a lot to me," Hannah replied carefully. "Of course, family is important, but I'd hope to continue my career as long as possible." Margaret's lips pursed slightly. "I understand, but priorities do shift with marriage, particularly when it comes to children. Surely you understand that." "Yes, of course," Hannah responded politely, feeling cornered yet determined not to let the conversation unsettle her further. James interjected gently, sensing his wife's discomfort. "Mom, we'll figure things out as we go along," James stated reassuringly, reaching over to hold Hannah's hand tightly. "I trust Hannah to decide what's best for herself and for us." Margaret's expression tightened imperceptibly, but she nodded stiffly. "Naturally. I only meant to suggest you both consider your future carefully." Throughout this exchange, Robert remained uncharacteristically quiet. When he eventually looked up, his eyes briefly met Hannah's, filled with an inexplicable sadness. He quickly turned away, and Hannah felt a pang of distress. Why did Robert avoid her gaze? What burden was hidden behind his solemn silence? After dinner, as they prepared to leave, Margaret briefly caught Hannah's arm, drawing her aside. Margaret's voice was low, tense, and direct. "I meant no offense earlier, Hannah. However, you must understand, our family has a complicated past. I expect you to respect boundaries." Hannah nodded slowly, though confused and hurt by the cryptic statement. "Of course, Margaret. I just want us all to be happy." Margaret studied her intently before stepping back, her eyes losing their hardness for a fleeting second. "So do I," she whispered almost inaudibly. "So do I." That night, back at their home, Hannah lay awake beside a sleeping James, her thoughts churning endlessly. Margaret's cryptic warning, Robert's peculiar silence, and the strange tension that enveloped her new family troubled her deeply. She rose quietly, wandering to the living room, where moonlight spilled softly through the window. Hannah gently touched her mother's locket, hanging delicately around her neck, a gift Elizabeth had left behind. She whispered into the quiet darkness, wishing desperately for guidance. "Mom, what should I do? Why do I feel this uneasy?" Hannah waited for an answer she knew would never come, tears silently streaming down her cheeks as she faced an uncertain future, one filled with secrets, misunderstandings, and hopes of eventual healing. Little did she know, the truth she sought was far closer and far more complicated than she could ever imagine. Chapter 2. The Weight of Silence. The following morning, sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting gentle patterns on the bedroom walls. Hannah woke to the familiar sound of birds chirping outside the window and the quiet hum of the city beginning its day. James was already gone, leaving early for a client meeting, as usual. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, the memories of last night's tension replaying in her mind. The strange interactions at dinner, Margaret's veiled warnings, and Robert's withdrawn demeanor all hung over her like a storm cloud threatening to burst. Determined to find some peace, Hannah dressed and prepared breakfast. She decided to call her closest friend from college, Emily, hoping for some comfort in familiar voices. "Hey, Hannah greeted warmly when the phone connected. "I could really use someone to talk to." Emily's cheerful tone responded immediately, "Of course, Hannah. What's going on?" "You sound stressed." Hannah sighed, leaning against the kitchen counter. "It's complicated. Things with my in-laws aren't as easy as I thought. Last night at dinner, Margaret hinted at family complications and Robert. He's so distant. It's like there's some secret no one wants to share." Emily paused thoughtfully. "That sounds tough. Have you tried talking to James about it?" "I have," Hannah admitted, "but he's so busy with work. He doesn't really notice what's happening. And when I bring it up, he brushes it off, saying it's just adjusting to the family." Emily's voice softened. "I'm sorry, Hannah. Just remember, you're not alone. I'm here whenever you need." A small smile tugged at Hannah's lips. "Thanks, that means a lot." After the call, Hannah felt a little lighter, though the unease remained. She decided to focus on her work as a teacher, throwing herself into lesson planning and organizing activities for her students. That afternoon, as Hannah returned home, the quiet house felt empty without James. She began unpacking a box from the move when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The text read, "You're not who you think you are. Be careful who you trust." Hannah's heart raced. She showed the message to James when he came home that evening. "What is this?" James frowned, taking the phone from her. "Did someone send you a threat?" "I don't know," Hannah whispered, anxiety creeping into her voice. "I've never seen this number before." James scrolled through the message again, brows furrowed. "We'll figure this out. Don't worry." But Hannah could no longer ignore the growing shadow cast over their marriage and the family she had entered. The strange glances, the secretive behavior, the cryptic warnings, they all hinted at something buried deep beneath the surface, something she had yet to uncover. That night, as she lay awake, Hannah made a silent promise to herself. No matter what secrets her new family held, she would uncover the truth and protect the life she and James were building together. Chapter 3. Hidden Shadows. The days that followed grew heavier with unspoken tension. Hannah felt eyes on her constantly, sometimes too quickly averted, sometimes lingering just a little too long. Margaret's once polite but cool demeanor shifted toward thinly veiled suspicion, and Robert's silence deepened into an almost haunted distance. One afternoon, as Hannah was tidying up the guest room, she stumbled upon a small, locked wooden box tucked away on a high shelf in the closet. Curious, she looked around and found a small key taped underneath the drawer of a nearby dresser. Her heart pounded as she carefully unlocked the box. Inside lay a collection of faded photographs, letters, and a delicate, worn locket. The pictures were of a young woman whose face was startlingly familiar. It was like looking at herself, only younger, softer, and somehow sadder. Some photos showed the woman smiling. Others showed her sitting alone, deep in thought. One letter caught Hannah's attention. The handwriting was neat and flowing. "My dearest Robert, though fate has kept us apart, know that you have always held my heart. May our children live a life free from the shadows that clouded ours." Hannah's breath caught. Could this woman be connected to her? Was this a secret tied to her mother's past that no one had told her? Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Hannah quickly closed the box and slipped it back onto the shelf just as Robert entered the room. "Find something interesting?" he asked quietly, his eyes darkening. Hannah swallowed hard, feeling caught. I found this box." "Who is she?" Robert hesitated, then looked away, pain flickering in his eyes. "That's someone from a past I thought was long buried. Someone I loved, but lost. Why didn't anyone ever tell me?" Hannah's voice trembled. Robert sighed deeply. "I was afraid it would hurt you or disrupt your happiness. I wanted to protect you, your family, your marriage." Hannah's mind raced. The shadows she felt around her family suddenly had shape, a story of lost love, pain, and secrets. But why was Margaret so harsh to her? Was it because she saw something in Hannah that reminded her of that lost woman? Before Robert could answer, the sound of the front door opening interrupted them. Margaret appeared in the doorway, her face pale and drawn. "Robert," she said quietly, "we need to talk." "Alone?" Robert nodded and turned to leave, pausing before the door. "Hannah, we will talk more. But for now, be careful. Not all truths are easy to face." As the door closed behind him, Hannah sat down heavily, clutching the locket in her hand, knowing her life and her family would never be the same again. Chapter 4. The Weight of Misunderstanding. That evening, the atmosphere in the Carter house grew thick with unspoken tension. Margaret retreated to her private sitting room, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a faded photograph of the young woman, the same one Hannah had discovered in the locked box. Memories flooded back in a tidal wave of regret and pain. Years ago, before the family had fully formed as it was now, Margaret had witnessed the deep connection between Robert and that woman. But tragedy had torn them apart, leaving wounds that never quite healed. When Hannah had entered their lives, so much about her stirred old emotions Margaret had tried desperately to bury. Not only did Hannah resemble that lost love, but her presence also threatened the fragile balance Margaret had fought to maintain. Fear and jealousy twisted into suspicion, leading Margaret to misjudge and mistreat her new daughter-in-law. Across the hall, Hannah sat alone in the living room, unaware that Margaret was struggling with the very demons that fueled her coldness. Hannah's heart ached with confusion and isolation. She had tried so hard to be part of this family, to nurture the fragile peace, but every step seemed met with resistance. Margaret's decision to intervene, going so far as to secretly give Hannah contraceptive pills, was born from desperation, a misguided attempt to protect her family from perceived threats. But the toll it took on Hannah was invisible to Margaret, who saw only her own fears reflected back. Later that night, Robert found Margaret in tears, her defenses crumbling. "We can't keep living like this," he said softly. "The truth needs to come out, no matter how painful." Margaret nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm scared, Robert. Scared that if the truth is revealed, everything will fall apart." Robert took her hand firmly. "Or maybe it's the truth that will finally set us free." Meanwhile, Hannah lay awake, clutching the locket her mother had given her years ago. The pieces of her fractured family slowly began to take shape in her mind, though the full picture was still beyond reach. One thing was clear. For healing to begin, the silence and misunderstandings had to be faced head-on. Chapter 5. The Hidden Truth Emerges. The next morning dawned cold and gray over Boulder, mirroring the heavy mood that settled over the Carter household. Hannah awoke early, the locket from her mother resting heavily against her chest as if it carried the weight of the secrets yet to be revealed. At breakfast, Margaret was unusually quiet. Her usual sharp gaze softened, but clouded with uncertainty. Robert sat beside her, his expression solemn but resolute. Finally, as James left for work, Margaret cleared her throat and looked directly at Hannah. "There are things you deserve to know, things that have kept us all trapped in silence for far too long." Hannah's heart pounded. She nodded, bracing herself for what was to come. Margaret took a deep breath. "Robert and your mother, they loved each other deeply. Before your mother passed, they had planned a future together. But fate was cruel and circumstances tore them apart." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes as memories of her mother's kindness and the painful absence she had lived with all these years flooded her mind. Robert added softly, "We kept it hidden to protect you and James, afraid the past would hurt your happiness. But in doing so, we allowed misunderstandings and pain to grow." Margaret's voice cracked as she continued, "My harshness, my distrust, it all stemmed from fear and jealousy. I was wrong to treat you as I did. I am truly sorry, Hannah. Hannah felt a mixture of sorrow and relief wash over her. The puzzle pieces finally aligned, explaining the coldness and suspicion that had plagued their family. I forgive you, Hannah whispered, her voice filled with both strength and compassion. And I want us to heal together. James returned just then, sensing the shift in the room as the family gathered closer. United by truth and a new hope, the past no longer held them captive. It was time to rebuild. Chapter 6. Bridges begin to mend. In the days that followed the revelation, an unspoken but profound shift rippled through the Carter household. Margaret's demeanor softened, her cold barriers slowly melting as she made conscious efforts to rebuild the fragile bonds she had strained for so long. She began including Hannah in daily conversations, asking about her well-being and even sharing stories about the family's past, stories tinged with both sorrow and love. James noticed the change immediately. One evening, as he returned home early, he found Hannah and Margaret in the kitchen preparing dinner together, laughter unexpectedly filling the air. The sight warmed his heart. After weeks of tension, peace was finally beginning to seep through the cracks. Hannah, too, felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The knowledge of the truth, though painful, gave clarity and understanding. For the first time, she sensed that she was truly part of this family, imperfections and all. One afternoon, as Hannah sat on the porch swing cradling the locket that had become her symbol of resilience, Margaret approached quietly. She carried a small, carefully wrapped gift. For you, Margaret said softly, handing it over. Inside was a delicate necklace, a simple silver chain with a small charm shaped like a blooming rose. It's beautiful, Hannah said, touched by the gesture. Margaret smiled gently. A symbol of new beginnings. For all of us. Together, they watched the sun dip below the horizon, casting warm golden light over the house that was slowly becoming a true home. Though the journey ahead would not be without challenges, the first steps toward healing had been taken, and with them, the promise of a stronger, more loving family. Chapter 7. New Life, New Hope. Several weeks later, Hannah sat quietly in the cozy living room, the soft afternoon light filtering through the curtains. A gentle warmth spread through her, an unmistakable sign that her body was carrying new life. The news of her pregnancy filled her with a mix of joy and nervous anticipation. She looked around the room, imagining the child growing inside her as a symbol of hope, a bond strong enough to heal even the deepest wounds. That evening, during a family dinner at the Carter house, Hannah shared her news. Margaret's eyes filled with tears, and she reached across the table to gently grasp Hannah's hand. This child, Margaret said softly, is a blessing for all of us. Robert nodded, his voice thick with emotion. It's time we move forward together, united by love and forgiveness. James smiled proudly, his arm around Hannah's shoulder. Our family will be stronger than ever. From that day on, the atmosphere in the household was suffused with renewed warmth and optimism. Plans were made for the baby's arrival, and Margaret eagerly took on the role of grandmother, embracing Hannah with genuine affection. The child became more than just a new member of the family. It was the living proof that even from pain and misunderstanding, love could grow and flourish. Chapter 8. Healing Together. As the months passed, the Carter household transformed with the arrival of new hope and renewed relationships. Hannah's pregnancy brought the family closer, bridging gaps once filled with suspicion and pain. Margaret, who had once been distant and harsh, now busied herself preparing the nursery and learning everything she could about becoming a grandmother. Her gestures, once cautious and rare, grew more frequent and warm. She often sat with Hannah, sharing stories about the family and offering advice, her voice softened by years of regret and hope. Robert, despite his frail health, found joy in the new life growing within their home. He frequently held Hannah's hand, speaking quietly of forgiveness and the power of truth. His presence, once distant, became a gentle anchor for the family. James, balancing work and home, made sure to spend quality time with Hannah and support her every step. Their marriage, once strained by external pressures, now flourished on a foundation of understanding and love. One peaceful evening, as the family gathered in the living room, laughter filled the air, a sound that had been absent for far too long. The old wounds had not vanished completely, but they were healing, softened by time, truth, and compassion. Hannah looked around at the faces surrounding her, faces that once seemed so far apart, and smiled. Together, they were writing a new story, one of healing, forgiveness, and family. Chapter 9. A Family Reborn. The arrival of spring brought new colors and a fresh sense of life to Boulder, and with it, the Carter family blossomed in ways none had expected. The once tense household now hummed with warmth and quiet joy. Hannah's due date approached, and preparations for the baby's arrival filled every corner of the home. Margaret, now a devoted grandmother-to-be, often sat knitting tiny blankets and booties, her hands steady despite the tremors of age. She would smile softly whenever Hannah caught her watching with a mixture of pride and affection. James remained a steadfast partner, his protective presence a constant reassurance. Together, he and Hannah attended prenatal classes, read parenting books, and dreamed of the family they were building. One afternoon, as Hannah rested in the sunlit nursery, Robert sat beside her, holding her hand gently. "You've brought light to us all," he said softly. "Thank you for your courage and grace." Hannah squeezed his hand. "It's all of us together. This child is a new beginning for every one of us." Though Robert's health waned, the family rallied around him, cherishing every moment. And when the baby finally arrived, healthy, beautiful, and full of promise, the joyous tears flowed freely. In that small hospital room, surrounded by love, forgiveness, and newfound understanding, the Carter family felt whole once again. The past had been painful, but the future was theirs to write together. Chapter 10. A Future Forged in Love. The weeks after the baby's birth were filled with sleepless nights, soft lullabies, and endless moments of wonder. Hannah and James navigated parenthood hand in hand, learning together as their child grew stronger each day. Margaret's transformation was remarkable. From a stern, distant mother-in-law, she had blossomed into a nurturing grandmother. Her heart opened by the new life that symbolized hope and renewal. Her apologies and efforts to mend past wounds were met with Hannah's quiet grace and forgiveness, gradually knitting their fractured relationship into something warm and genuine. Robert, though weakened by illness, found peace in witnessing the healing of his family. One afternoon, as the sun cast golden light through the nursery window, he held the baby gently in his arms, tears of gratitude shining in his eyes. "This child," he whispered, "is a testament to love's power to heal even the deepest scars." The Carter household, once shadowed by secrets and misunderstandings, now hummed with laughter, love, and the promise of tomorrow. Together, they looked forward, not forgetting the past, but strengthened by it, ready to face life's challenges as one united family. Chapter 11. The past finally at peace. The days grew quieter as Robert's health slowly declined, yet his spirit remained unbroken. In his final weeks, surrounded by those he loved, he took time to mend the last fragile threads of the family tapestry. One afternoon, Robert called Hannah and Margaret to his bedside. With a frail but determined voice, he spoke of forgiveness, not just for each other, but for themselves. "We all carry burdens," he said softly, "but it is in letting go that we find freedom." Margaret. "Hannah, you have both shown me what love truly means." Margaret grasped his hand tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you for your courage, Robert, for helping us find our way. Hannah smiled warmly, feeling a profound peace she hadn't known was possible. Your honesty brought us together. We'll carry that love forward. As Robert's breath grew shallow, the room filled with quiet reverence. When he finally passed, a gentle calm settled over the family, a silent promise that his legacy would be one of healing, not pain. In the weeks after, Margaret and Hannah often sat together, sharing memories, laughter, and dreams. Their relationship, once fraught with suspicion and hurt, had blossomed into mutual respect and affection. The Carter family had been through shadows, but now they stood in the light, stronger, closer, and ready to face the future as one. Chapter 12: A New Beginning. With Robert's passing, the Carter family gathered for a quiet memorial service that reflected his life, a man who valued family above all else, even when burdened by secrets and regrets. The ceremony was intimate, attended by close friends and relatives, filled with stories that revealed the kindness beneath his reserved exterior. Margaret, standing beside Hannah and James, felt a deep shift within her. The harshness that once defined her relationship with Hannah had softened into understanding and love. Holding Hannah's hand tightly, she whispered, "Thank you for forgiving me. I promise to be the mother-in-law you deserve." Hannah smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for choosing to heal with me." In the weeks that followed, life settled into a comforting rhythm. Hannah's pregnancy progressed smoothly, surrounded by the warmth of a family rekindled. The home buzzed with preparations for the baby's arrival, laughter echoing where silence once reigned. James and Hannah often talked late into the night, dreaming of the future and the family they were building, one forged through trials, forgiveness, and unwavering love. As spring turned to summer, the Carter household blossomed with renewed hope, proving that even the deepest wounds could give way to new beginnings. Chapter 13. Embracing the future. Summer days brought warmth not only in weather but in hearts. The Carter home was alive with anticipation, laughter, and the subtle but unmistakable glow of a family healing. Hannah's belly grew round with the promise of new life, and with it, a renewed sense of hope blossomed in everyone around her. Margaret busied herself with preparations, selecting soft blankets, tiny clothes, and carefully assembling the nursery with a pride that softened even the hardest moments of the past. She and Hannah shared quiet afternoons discussing names and dreams for the child, the space between them filled with a tentative but growing affection. James balanced his demanding work with his new role as a supportive husband and soon-to-be father, often surprising Hannah with small acts of love, a warm cup of tea, a gentle massage, or just as comforting presence after a long day. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Robert's favorite meal lovingly prepared by Margaret, they shared stories and laughter, the room illuminated by candlelight and the warmth of forgiveness. Hannah looked around the table, heart full, and realized that this moment, imperfect yet beautiful, was the true gift of their journey. They had faced darkness, but together had found light. The future awaited, wide open and bright, ready to be embraced with love, understanding, and the strength of family. Chapter 14. Strength in Forgiveness. The weeks before Hannah's due date were filled with moments both ordinary and extraordinary. Each day brought its own challenges, but also deepened the bonds between family members who had once been strangers to one another's hearts. Margaret and Hannah found themselves growing closer, their conversations flowing more easily as they shared memories, hopes, and sometimes tears. The walls that had once separated them now crumbled, replaced by mutual respect and understanding. One afternoon, as Hannah rested in the sunlit nursery, Margaret sat beside her, taking her hand gently. "Hannah," she began softly, "I want you to know how sorry I am for the pain I caused you. You have shown me the true meaning of forgiveness." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. "Thank you, Margaret. It hasn't been easy, but I believe love can heal even the deepest wounds. Margaret smiled, her eyes shining with sincerity. We're stronger together now. And soon, this family will have a new member to love and protect. James entered the room, wrapping his arms around both women, their unity a testament to the power of forgiveness and hope. Together, they looked toward the future, a future filled with promise, where love would always find a way. Chapter 15. A Promise of Tomorrow. The crisp autumn breeze carried the scent of change as Hannah's due date drew near. The Carter household brimmed with quiet excitement, each member preparing for the arrival of the child who would embody hope and renewal. Hannah sat by the window, gently resting her hand on her belly, feeling the soft flutter of life within. Beside her, James held her close, whispering promises of protection, love, and a future filled with happiness. Margaret entered the room carrying a small, wrapped package, a gift for the baby. She placed it gently on the table and smiled warmly. For the little one who has already brought us all back together. Hannah's eyes glistened with tears. Thank you, Margaret. This family means everything to me now. Outside, leaves danced in swirling patterns as if celebrating the new chapter unfolding within the walls of the Carter home. Though the past had been marked by shadows and misunderstandings, the future was bright, a promise forged in love, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Chapter 16. The Gift of Life. The day finally arrived in a flurry of excitement and quiet anticipation. The hospital room was softly lit, filled with the hushed whispers of nurses and the gentle beeping of monitors. Hannah's hand tightened around James's as contractions came and went, each wave bringing her closer to meeting the child who had already changed their lives. Margaret sat nearby, her eyes glistening with tears, silently praying for the safe arrival of her grandchild. Though once distant and wary, her heart was now fully open, filled with hope and love. Hours later, the cries of a newborn filled the room, followed by the tender coos of a mother meeting her child for the first time. Hannah's exhausted but radiant face reflected pure joy as James gently held their baby, a tiny, perfect bundle of life. Tears streamed down Margaret's cheeks as she leaned forward, softly touching the newborn's tiny hand. "Welcome to the family, little one," she whispered. The child's arrival was more than a beginning, it was a healing balm for wounds old and new. In that moment, surrounded by love and forgiveness, the Carter family was truly whole. Chapter 17. Bonds strengthened by love. The weeks following the baby's birth were filled with moments of tenderness, learning, and deep connection. Hannah and James embraced parenthood together, their love growing stronger as they navigated sleepless nights and joyful milestones. Margaret, now a devoted grandmother, surprised everyone with her gentle care and eagerness to support Hannah. Her earlier harshness was replaced with warmth, her presence a soothing comfort in the new family dynamic. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the nursery window, Hannah watched Margaret cradle the baby, humming a lullaby softly. A smile spread across her face. The family she had longed for was finally coming together. James joined them, wrapping an arm around Hannah's shoulders. "We're stronger now," he said quietly. "Thanks to all of us." Hannah nodded, feeling hope and gratitude fill her heart. The past was behind them, and the future awaited, bright, promising, and filled with love. Chapter 18. Embracing New Traditions. As the months unfolded, the Carter family found joy in creating new memories and traditions together. The home, once heavy with unspoken tensions, now echoed with laughter, the soft coos of the baby, and the warmth of genuine connection. Margaret took great pleasure in introducing family customs to her grandchild, from baking recipes passed down through generations to sharing stories of resilience and love. Hannah embraced these moments, grateful for the opportunity to build a nurturing environment. James balanced his work commitments with active participation in family life, often surprising Hannah and the baby with small, thoughtful gestures. Their bond grew deeper, fortified by shared experiences and mutual respect. One crisp autumn evening, the family gathered around the fireplace, wrapped in cozy blankets and sipping warm cider. As the baby slept peacefully nearby, they reflected on their journey, from misunderstanding and pain to forgiveness and unity. Together, they looked forward to a future rich with hope, strengthened by the love that had brought them through the darkest times. Chapter 19. A celebration of healing. The first anniversary of the baby's birth was marked with a joyful celebration at the Carter house. Family and close friends gathered to honor not only the new life, but the healing journey the family had traveled together. The house was decorated with soft lights and fragrant flowers, laughter and music filling every corner. Margaret, once stern and distant, stood proudly beside Hannah, her eyes shining with genuine happiness. James gave a heartfelt toast, acknowledging the strength and forgiveness that had united them all. Tears were shed, hugs exchanged, and old wounds finally sealed by the love that had grown in their place. Hannah looked around at the smiling faces, each one a testament to resilience, grace, and the power of family. The past, with all its pain and secrets, was no longer a chain but a foundation on which they built their future. As the evening wound down, Hannah and James held their child close, whispering promises of love, protection, and endless hope. Together, the Carter family embraced a new chapter, one of unity, joy, and the unbreakable bonds forged through healing. Chapter 20. A family united. Seasons changed, and with them came the steady rhythm of life for the Carter family. The home was now filled with warmth, laughter, and the gentle sounds of a child growing surrounded by love. Hannah and James, stronger together, continued to nurture their marriage and their family, cherishing each moment. Margaret, once a figure of strictness and distance, had become a beloved grandmother and confidant. The walls that had once divided them were replaced by bridges of understanding and compassion. One sunny afternoon, as the baby took first steps in the garden, Margaret watched with tears of joy. "Look at how far we've come," she whispered softly. Hannah smiled, taking her mother-in-law's hand. "We all grew, and we all healed." James joined them, pulling both women into a warm embrace. "This is our family, imperfect, but united." In that moment, beneath the golden light of a setting sun, the Carter family knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, their bonds, strengthened by forgiveness and love, would carry them through. Their story was no longer one of shadows, but of light, hope, and a future built together.